Well, I've only got half an hour to take you to an entirely different place, somewhere where the objective, he's the wrong way up, and subjective worlds, there's really no division between them at all. And where the life of the dream is intellectually just as powerful as waking life. So this actually is all looked at from the point of view of this conference, is all generated by one type of man, the greatest of all advertisers. He controls the minds of everybody in most of the countries south of the Sahara, from the president down. And this type of man is called the sorcerer. And the way he thinks and the control he exerts is something that we can all understand instantly, which is another reason I like it. And the disruption is almost total in the whole economy. And one reason for that is, if you're a big man, if you're one of these geniuses we've seen on stage, and you accumulate a lot of money, then all your relatives will be jealous. And to be jealous, this is something you do not want other people, ever, to be jealous of you, because then they go to the sorcerer. And then they put some appalling spell on you. Maybe I'll talk about that right at the end, because I'm worried we're not going to get there. I need you to feel completely horrified. And these objects will help at the end. But the disruption is total just in terms of economics, because say you're a big man, you've made a lot of money, now all your relatives, as I say, will be jealous, or they'll threaten you, and you have to give all of them, almost dividing your money up, your income. So you're left with absolutely nothing often. Now, in the West, we call that corruption, because any money you get goes at once. Very little gets to the country, gets to good causes. Well, nothing, mostly. But you may find you have 300 relatives that you didn't know you had. You may have 3,000. That's where all the money goes. So in a way, it's not quite corruption as we understand it. Now here's the only way to get from the south to the north of the Congo, and vice versa. Only now it doesn't exist anymore because there's no diesel. But when I was there, these massive iron barges are roped, hawsered together, and there's a big engine block, and upriver you go. Now, the trouble with these beautiful pictures is that, they cut a lot of things out. For instance, the smell. Now, there are 3,000 people on these barges. It really is a town ship. And one available lavatory. There were 3 others, but the purser kept his collection of crocodiles roped up in them to sell when he got back. And at night, big gaps between the iron barges, and I'm afraid the babies, 5 that I heard about, just slip between the gaps and they go. Life is not that precious. Now, this is Enze, who was the nephew of Marcelin, who was, as it were, Congo's leading rational man, Congo's leading scientist. He was in control of the conservation of the fauna and flora of the People's Republic of the Congo. But in an African family, the maternal uncle is the most powerful man. And if you think about it for a second, you can see that makes a lot of sense, because your mother's brother, he will know perfectly well that you are related to him. Whereas if it's the other way around, the father never has the slightest idea. This is, in some ways, a good side of sorcery. Enze had one eye pointing at the sky and one at the ground, and yet he was surprisingly effective, really. And he said that his grandfather was the greatest sorcerer that had ever lived between the Congo and Senegal. We had lots of arguments about who was the most powerful sorcerer. But his grandfather you see a little slit here, had sewed a fetish into him under the arm, and then one there, and then also on the other side. And he said to me, look, if you don't believe it, I'll show you. When I see a girl I really fancy in one of these villages, you'll see, I'll have her. All I have to do is look straight at her and I go, boom, and she's mine. Now, it may have had something to do with the fact that he'd made his own musical instrument, a sort of sitar, and he played beautifully and he sang wonderfully well. But he thought otherwise. Oh, well, that shouldn't really be there, but I like this picture because I look so thin and macho, and as you can see, those days have gone. It's so sad. And this is Marcelin, who's probably still thin and macho if he's alive. And here we are discussing crossing over a watershed. We've left the dugout canoes in this particular village and are going to cross over to another river system. What I didn't know is that the village on the Mataba on the other side was called Berenzoka, which means the elephant hunters, and they weren't in the least interested in canoes, so had an awful long time to contemplate sorcery. Now, this clock says 26 minutes, and it's had it on for a long time. I mean, that's fine by me, but how long have you got? 26 minutes will do fine. So if we've got 26 minutes, and we've had them since the beginning, 21, 20, oh no. Terrible, terrible. Now, in this village, all these things happen at midnight, and I'd made the mistake of asking for a fetish for my own protection, on the grounds that I had lots of enemies in Oxford, and from that moment, there are psychological problems that come with it. Disruption. But the design is fine. So, all these things happen at midnight, and Doku is the name of the sorcerer, and he's an old man with a goiter. And this way of thought has lots of consequences, all of which I rather like. Now, in a village, you'll find that the only old person is a sorcerer and his wife, and he will have maybe up to 5 or 6 wives, and they will all be very healthy. Now, why? Answer: because they never get any sexually transmitted disease, because everybody knows if you sleep with one of the wives of a sorcerer, you are dead on penetration. So there's the design, and the disruption is total. And it really works. It really works. And if the sorcerer sleeps with somebody, not his wife, he loses his power at once. So he ceases to be the big man. So he doesn't. So it's a happy family. Now, I asked for this fetish, and all the Bantu in these villages have massively deep voices. So the language of power is really very spooky. It's very high. So this big man, I suppose he's 70 years old, with his goiter bobbing up and down, and the gourds hanging in the black, smoky, little tiny hut, where now I don't think you would want to book a surrogate hotel room there. No. Anyway, he comes through and he gives me fetish, and he says, "Mr. Redmond, this is a fetish for your protection. It contains the finger of a child. The finger of this child will protect you from thoughts that are old and sad. The child will stop your thoughts from becoming sad. Your friends, your close friends, the men you hunt with, may touch it. Your wife may touch it. But if she washes her private parts with it, it will lose its power at once." So I thought, I did eventually get back home 6 months later, and I nearly got hit. She didn't want to wash her private parts with it. So, But this, 17 minutes. Now this, terrifying. This is why you need a fetish. Now this is, I think, is particularly horrible. I got this from Doku, because, and again, the design is so clever. It's even more psychologically, subconsciously clever than Roman Catholicism. Now, this I got for 16 chickens because it had lost its power. Now, that sounds a lot, but so still worth a bit, but not much, because the last person that this terrible process had happened to had refused to hang himself. So, nothing wrong with the system, nothing wrong with the design. After all, here we have 12 knots. So, this design works. Now, why the design works, plugs into the subconscious. If you really hate somebody in your company, you would go to Doku, and you have to be serious because you're going to part with half your salary at least. And when you'd given Doku your chickens, he will scrape the neck of this doll. You see it's been well scraped here. And mix this wood with special herbs from the forest, probably are mildly poisonous, and chop them up and dry them. And then the really important thing, he would go to a secret place in his hut or in the forest, dig up a skull of his ancestors, which has clay in it, clay dripped in, and the brain contents have been dripped into this clay, and then it's preserved forever. So a little spoon of that, mix it up, and then he would ask his eldest wife to call round on the poor victim. No, the other way around, the youngest, of course. And victim would be very pleased to see her because she's maybe 16 years old. And she will drop a little of this powder in the palm wine. And then in the morning, the oldest hag, she goes round and she says to the victim, "Your palm wine has been tampered with." That's the most terrifying thing you can hear. Then from that moment on, because spells are infectious, if you look at somebody, you can catch it. That's a very good design point. So, no one will talk to you. They just walk straight past. People that you've, I was going to say gone to school with, but there are no schools, but it worked with you in the plantation. They won't even look at you. And, well, you go into despair. If you're lucky, your youngest wife will cook for you still, and you'd say, in a Western way, why not? Oh, just get out of there. Go down south. Get to Brazzaville. Well, you can't, really. Because each village, as a group of 5 villages, say, and they all have different languages. The immigration into this area 70, 80,000 years ago, long enough to split these warring groups into tribes with different groups with different languages. They don't even have the same name for the sun and the moon, so you're stuck. And I said to Anthony Storr when I got back to Oxford, I was told that these people, they died in 4 months. And he said, well, that's very interesting. That's exactly right. Acute, untreated depression will do that. It's a good design. Now, well, maybe to bring it alive for you, perhaps it doesn't need bringing alive, but say you're in your company and one day the boss calls you in and he says, look, I can't fire you because of your contract. You had some clever lawyers. But you see, everybody here, they really hate you. And, I nearly forgot, but you stink. Now, here, everybody has contributed in this whole company, really quite a large amount of money I have here. This is to send you on holiday for as long as possible. Okay? And your wife's just been in, and she has matched the amount exactly from her savings. And she has a message for you here. What's it? Oh, yes, she says, your children play so happily until they hear your key in the door. That would do it, I think. It has to be a double blow. Well, let's go visit the pygmies, cheer ourselves up. These are good really good atheists, or rather they say the forest is God, God is the forest, and that's their design. And it works for them very, very well because it enables them to play with the Bantu, the big Bantu. So in this particular instance I'm thinking of, these pygmy hunters said to the Bantu hunters, if you go that way into the forest, past that tree, I can assure you, your testicles will fall off. And it worked. And if you do go into the forest that way, as we did, then you come to the most wonderful, rich hunting ground with not a Bantu in sight. Now, I'd rather ruin this by giving them all Jubilee necklaces from England, these stupid things. Anyway, but I should have waited, taken the pictures first. But otherwise, this is completely exactly as it is. They have a very good, wonderful method of hunting. They get their nets, link their nets up, and it's so efficient. They can be a third of a kilometer, these huge nets, well that high off the ground, linked. And then you drive the animals, the water chevrotain and the duikers, the little antelope, towards the nets. And I thought maybe this is why there's often a practical reason beneath a design of a way of life. Maybe this is why there's so much humor, dancing, bonding, togetherness, happiness, it seems, ridiculously so. You are immediately struck with what a happy, entertaining people they are, and they're laughing all the time. And I think that's probably because if you do not cooperate, you starve. Your nets are the most important thing. All the families must stay together. And I asked the old man here, what happens if somebody does offend? You know, what's the law? What happens? And he said, well, he couldn't really remember, but there was a case, not in his lifetime, but before him, when somebody had offended terribly, and the punishment is to take this entrance to your house out, fill it up with leaves, open one at the back. So you look out into the forest, not at your friends and your families. And I said, oh, that sounds terrible. How long did it last? And he said 2 days, 2 whole days. So not a lot of punishment goes on, but there's no need for it. Now, very beautiful. Of hunter-gatherers, it's always true. When you meet them, you think, my God, he could go to, you get a first-class degree at LIDA or wherever. Answer to that is yes, if they don't look wonderful and healthy and bright, they're dead. A terribly hard natural selection process goes on. One swipe with a, or a poisoned arrow in the wrong place and so on, you're dead. Now, this is a little guy, I think he's about 8 years old. Now, I tried lifting that net, and I couldn't move it. So he's got his net on his head that I was talking about, and those are the spears to spear the antelope when they are caught in the net. It's just rather wonderful that probably nothing has changed. Certainly, we know nothing's changed since Pepi II sent his general Herkuf south from Egypt, the pharaoh Pepi. His general Herkuf, who wrote back, sent a message back to the pharaoh, and we know about this because Herkuf was so pleased with the reply, he had it chiseled into the stone of his tomb. And the letter from Pepi, who was 14 at the time, says, My Majesty cannot wait to hear the song of the little people, singing and playing beneath the great trees of the forest. So, we'll see in a minute, that's just what happens now. That's waiting for everybody to catch up. Now, I would have thought, that's the only thing I didn't really like, being sentimental. They just start butchering at once, and the poor antelope groans and eventually dies. And then Larry Schaffer, the photographer with me, said, well, I suppose we were all like that once. It wasn't before farming came along. It was only 10,000 years ago. We treated our animals as surrogate children. Yeah. Now, you couldn't possibly call him a sorcerer. He was a power for good. And if they're very lucky, every pygmy group, every Babinga, these are, has an old man in their society. And he impressed me profoundly. I had a little problem, because Manu, you haven't seen yet, but Manu, sort of fragile and gracile. He was another nephew of Marsland with me. He was meant to be carrying, a big pack, but he refused because he said he had terrible, terrible pain in his back, and it was very lucky that he was walking at all. So I said to the doctor, I have this problem. I wonder if you could do something for me. And he did. He said, absolutely no problem. Didn't even ask for a medical fee. Now, 18 slits across Manu's shoulders there, very painful indeed. 18 slits, then rubbed with charcoal in the sensitive place just beneath the back of a man's trousers. And to keep his mind off the pain, they hit him really hard with that stick there. And this design, it worked. Manu never complained of back pain ever again. Now he's so handsome, this guy. He just shinned up a tree, immensely strong, and he's just got a whole bag of honey. Didn't even bother to smoke the bees. And now he also turns out to be the master of the dance. He was in charge of entertainment. So he really was radio, newspapers, television, everything rolled into one. Now, this is the dance of the women before the master of the dance arrives. And the old woman there, again, very rare to have an old woman of that age. And she dances, every time she dances, she's happy because she's brought back to life her son who died when he was that height. Now, here is the master of the dance. He's arriving, and because we were allowed to take 2 flash pictures before there was chaos and horror, I didn't see it at the time as dark, but look, he's wearing a gorilla mask over his head. He's got a gorilla skull on, and he's wrapped up in bark cloth, and I thoroughly approve of this. I mean, he couldn't use the internet, but he went for miles through the forest, and he got a net. For a net, he got this new dance. It's called the Dance of Death, and I thoroughly approve of it. You have to dance it out, but he'd come dancing into the enclosure like this as death and spin so fast he disappeared into the ground almost. I've never seen anybody spin so fast or be so athletic. Well, that makes sense of the Egyptian reports again, saying the pygmies can make themselves invisible by disappearing into the center of the earth, which actually did seem true in the half-light. Now, the Dance of Death, very good idea. You ask him in, and you give him an enormous amount of palm wine, and then when he's completely drunk and lying down, you take him out into the deep forest and leave him there. So, no more death. Now, in my mind, again, one's not in control really, still in my dreams, this is Muko who really looked after me, and he seemed to know everything. I'm afraid in his spare time, if the Sudanese come in and give him a packet of cigarettes, he will walk up to an elephant and shoot it straight in the throat. They are, in a way, invisible hunters. And in my mind, he's enormous. He's really tall. If I hadn't got this picture, I'd say to you, it is such an anthropological nonsense. Pygmies are not small at all. Now this was just one building that the Larry Schaffer, this very, very practical American with me, he loved building. He was actually from Swabia, so he just built houses for himself all his life. Now, this was the one building that he actually admired. And well, I suppose the dogs would be pleased with the design. They're all driven up there at night, all the dogs of the village. But then every night, you can hear it. You hear the dogs howling, whoa, and then underneath you hear, and that's a leopard. Comes in and sits underneath, and that entertains the leopard, and, well, it does something to the dogs. And I read afterwards that every leopard, they specialize, leopards, so most of their life they would just go for a forest crocodile or a duiker or a water chevrolet, and it makes sense. You have a particular prey that you really know well. But every leopard loves dog. This is yours. Well, I've only got 2 minutes, so that's terrible. This is the only bad thing about pygmy life is that they have a tremendous craving for starch. Go to a village and get all the local diseases. Now, well, this is another story, really. It's about, Lake Tele in the Congo, where there's said to be a sauropod dinosaur. Now, you know, if you've heard this dinosaur, you're dead. But in fact, it's a protective animal for that particular village. I think perhaps we'd better stop. We've got a minute to go and they've cut me off. Otherwise, they're going all night. So thank you very much.